Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, as long as you talk loud because these phones are nuts.
Okay, I'll make it. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're streaming live.
We're streaming live now. Um, okay, hello everybody. We are now live on Facebook. We've got the technical difficulties in hand, and I want to welcome back Joe Donofrio, who is going to be a household name to all of you now at this stage from his visits here. And Joe has very kindly introduced me to this gentleman, Jimmy Mulidore. So, hi, Jimmy.
Hello, David O'Rourke.
Now, you shocked me the other day right off the bat, and I went and I looked it up, and sure enough, it's not that I doubted you, but you told me that my name, I share a name with a really wonderful jazz saxophone player out of Cleveland.
Right.
And you spoke very highly of him in the kind of way that we do of, we fellow musicians talk about people who we really respect. And
without a doubt, David O'Rourke, he was unbelievable, David O'Rourke.
And what a shock to see, if he has any reviews that are better than mine, I'm gonna just cut them in, and it'll be the truth. If I'm quoting what critics said about David O'Rourke, it can be about him, and I'm all good, right?
There's another David now.
The first thing about David O'Rourke, and you, David O'Rourke, is he was nuts. And I don't know you to say that about you, so I'll say you're not nuts.
What would you say, Joe?
I would say just a little.
Just
But nobody was nuts like Dave O'Rourke. He would get a sheet off of his bed, cut a hole in the middle, and show up at a jazz concert. And I mean, I'm talking with Joe Williams and all of the great artists. And he'd walk in the room with a sheet off of his bed with the hole in the middle.
And he was from Cleveland, correct?
Yeah. I said, what are you doing? He said, I love reactions. I said, but man, this is my band. Get the hell out of here with that goddamn sheet off you. Dave O'Rourke. What a great player. Oh my God, what a player.
So David?
So I've read your book, and I'm really glad I did ahead of this, because not only because of the book, but also because of the DVD that came with it.
Oh, great.
But typical of, when they need to put a one-line tag on somebody's book, and there's a photograph and the words, the Vegas player, and then it says celebrities, sex, drugs, mafia. And you know what? That doesn't give a hint at some of the poignant stuff that's in that book that moved me enormously. And I'm going to go straight to the first one that jumped out at me is we Irish and we Italians share the immigrant experience of coming through Ellis Island here to the United States, and the hero to me in the first chapter is your father, Philip, right? Wasn't that your father's name?
Philip Mulidore. Incidentally, today he would have been 101 years old. It's his birthday, May 28th.
Ah, so today right. Well, I'm going to show an image that I think in the book it says that people in Youngstown would look down into the valley and see this, right? Joe will bear,
yes,
the sheet and tube.
Mill, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I'll just show this first so people get a look at this. So, is that what you would you have seen that, Joe, growing up from where you were?
Yes.
Okay. Now, why am I showing that? I'm showing that because a lot of families, and this wouldn't have been unusual, would turn around and say to their kids, you need to, when you grow up, you got to get out of school as quickly as possible and get a job down there in the steel mill, bring in some money, and work like your father and your grandfather before you, or how many generations were there. That's as high a bar was set for a lot of families. But your father was different, and apologies for my use of language here, but at one point he said, if you go anywhere near that place, start to work, I'll break your fucking arm.
Exactly, right? Exactly. I can still hear him say that.
Now,
and, you know, when a father says that to you, he takes on a lot of responsibility. Number one, his side of the family was the most rotten, jealous, green-eyed Italians in the world. They didn't like my dad, and they didn't like my mother because she came from a black side of the Youngstown, Sharonland. So hearing him say that when I was 8 years old made me say, I'll show these MFs. And that provoked me to be who I became, because he put a lot of responsibility on me to make something out of a saxophone, which cost him $386. Took him 6 years to pay off. And I said, if a man, I was smart enough at 8 years old to realize that a man would go out on a limb making no money. We were eating dandelions for dinner. Go over across the street and cut it out of the dirt, greens and beans and rice. And go out of it on a limb to buy me a horn, that said I owe my dad everything. So thank you for bringing him up. He is the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Well, that's what I wanted people to know, that because most people would consider a career in music a very vulnerable career. There was no guarantees. There's no fixed wage. And I'm sure he was aware of all that too, but he saw that as being looking at a far better future for his son than going to work in the steel mill. So this is what the American dream is. It's
David, I can't thank you or appreciate what you're saying enough. I'm so glad that you read through that and really realized what he was attempting to do with my life and to keep me out of that rotten steel mill, because he never allowed me to even go close. And I appreciate you realizing that and bringing that up. Thank you.
Well, that's the first thing that jumped out at me. And, you know, I've had conversations through the years with Joe about Youngstown, because I'm a fan of the fight game. So I would have people you know well too, Boom Boom, but also Kenny Pavlik, who remember I couldn't remember his name the last day, Joe. He
yes.
I remember they would do
Kelly Pavlik.
Kelly Pavlik, that's right. Kenny, I still got it wrong. Look at that. They would show before a fight. They'd show a guy training in his hometown with a little biography. So Youngstown, the name was already in my head when you would have told me. But so the other thing now that jumped out at me in the same way, and your father is the star of this show again, is there's that very evocative scene in A Bronx Tale where Robert De Niro's character marches into the it's not a bar, it's the club.
Man, you are man, I can't believe how astute you are. I got to give you credit, Joe. Where'd you find this guy? He's wonderful. Joe has a gun to my head going, you better ask the right questions or this guy or your history. So I better make sure I ask the right questions or he won't. Compliment.
Joe will have me, if this was possible, he'd have me opening for my own band. Right? But and we're not even getting to the music yet with you, but this is very moving again because it's so well acted in A Bronx Tale where De Niro's character goes in and stands down all the mob guys who've been making fun of him, saying, "I don't want my son to be like you." He stands.
That is one way of looking at it, David. But if I can give you a more of an insight,
right?
We were right next door to the famous mafia Naples brothers, Sandy, Joey, and Billy. And of course, I became very tight with the oldest one, Sandy Naples. He took upon me, like you said, in the Bronx Tale. Quite older than me, and I was washing his car, bringing money to the detectives, paying off once or twice a month, $3,000 envelope. And I got to know everything about it. But being right next door, matter of fact, today I posted a picture of me and my dad when I was a young little tot, even before I started playing saxophone, in the backyard, and it shows the Naples backyard with the mafia people. So, what I'm trying to say is, it was not like he'd march over and demanded. There was so much love and respect that came from the Naples family and the Mulidore family that my dad walked over like a family member. He didn't demand anything. He just, as he told me, just quietly said, Sandy, I don't want my son to be involved with what you're into, more or less. And I bought him a saxophone, and I want him to be a musician. And if you don't encourage him to come with you when he gets older, I would really appreciate that. So that was kind of a different
It's a
scenario
different approach
Robert
than the movie had, yeah. However, in the movie, the reason I mentioned the movie was, even though it looks like they're laughing at De Niro and there's no respect, it's so well put together, that scene, that you can tell that the guys wish they were like him because
Yes.
of the way he is with the family. And so that would account for the kind of respect that your father would have gotten apart from. It was your right next to your grandmother's house, was it, that the Naples
Exactly,
family?
yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
old 5 Poplar Street, yes.
so you'd mentioned there that at the time you know you were washing cars for them, as they probably would throw a young kid a few bucks, and then
Oh,
it was
yeah.
when you had to give the envelope that to the unmarked car would show up, right? With it.
Yeah, twice a week. They pull up to that garage, which is in the photo on Facebook, not into the garage, but on the street. And Sandy would leave the envelope in the front seat, trusting me to walk over and give them. And I had no idea what I was doing. Just walk over, give them an envelope, and they'd take off. That's how simple it was. But
So
I
the
got
next
to
step
tell you,
was getting you lessons on, and I haven't got the name written down, but Al was the first name of the teacher that was a famous clarinet teacher.
Calderon.
Al Calderon, and he gave you you didn't have a clarinet. He gave you a metal clarinet, and you for a while convinced yourself it was a soprano saxophone, right?
More or less, but it was it was called a Penza Mueller, which is, you could probably buy it at McCrory's or a Walmart's for $49. And it was horrible. And at that time, I had no money for reeds. So guess what? He gave me all of his used reeds. Well, it was what it was, Joe, right?
Yeah, you're moving out of
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
now we can see you. Good.
That's okay. That's okay. We can. So can you remember what kind of music would he have had you playing on from the start? And
All
was he a
classic.
jazz musician?
No.
No.
Classical music. He didn't
Right.
like jazz. He didn't even like Charlie Parker.
Uh-oh.
Until I introduced him to him when I was 15 years old, when he came into Campbell, Ohio at the Coppola. I mean, he could appreciate Charlie Parker, but he was kind of a black guys can't play, an old-fashioned Italian guy, which was
Right.
no, he really turned out not to be that way. But at that time, he didn't like Charlie Parker, so we played nothing but classical music and all of the technical exercise that it would make you a virtuoso. And that I started at 8 years old, and I could still feel him hitting my fingers with the little metal gadget when I made a mistake. He hit me on the finger.
That was the routine with a lot of teachers back in the day, wasn't it? You made a mistake, I was getting piano lessons. I got the ruler on the hands,
Yeah.
the wooden ruler. So another thing now that I'm going to jump ahead a little bit now to, this is for us jazz musicians. This thing, we go through phases where we say, you know what, I played with a guy who actually played with Charlie Parker. So in your case, the owner of the Copa Club was that in Cleveland? No, what?
Campbell.
In Campbell, you mentioned. He had Bird coming to town to play, and he asked you if you wanted to ride to the airport to go pick him up.
Yes, and of course I almost fell on my face because like God is coming to town, being a saxophonist, and you hear Charlie Parker coming to town. Good God Almighty! So if you read the story, when I got
Yeah.
there, no horn.
He brought no horn, yeah.
He smelled like a goat. He had a lot of tomato stains all over his tie. And I recall his white shirt used to be white. But Bird was almost like a homeless guy. I mean, he'd sleep anywhere, he'd do anything. And how he became Charlie Parker is only God knows. To be that phenomenal of a jazz artist and live the life that he lived and died in 1955 it's unbelievable. So
Pick the phone
yeah,
up.
that was quite a revelation to go there to the airport and he said, "Go get me a horn." I said, "Where's your horn?" "I don't have any." Think about that. You're coming to a major jazz club, more or less, in the East Coast there, and you don't have your horn, Joe.
What happened?
What are you going to sound like? And of course, I went to the at the instructions of Charlie or whatever his name was, Owens, the owner, the guy that was running the Copa. And he said, "Go get him a horn." So they didn't have these Selmers. No, they had a student model Con. When you say student model, like driving a Volkswagen, then go out and drive in a BMW. So I found this horn and I got it because I was taking lessons there. They allowed me to take it on consignment, which eventually the guy paid him. And I got the horn with the white mouthpiece. And then under Bird's instructions, give me the hardest reeds you can find, Rico. Well, all they have number 5. You can't get any harder. Okay. Well, make a long story short, he got the horn. And when he showed up to play, Joe, he sounded just like Charlie Parker. I mean, no, that's hard to do. And, you know, he stole that horn, David.
Yeah.
He took that horn with him, and it's still in pictures in Birdland when he's playing that little white mouthpiece called Golden Tone. He took that horn. Matter of fact, last year I worked with a bass player who was named Curtis Lundy.
I know Curtis, yeah. You know Curtis, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You heard of Curtis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked with Curtis. I worked with Kenny Garrett's pianist, Vernell Brown, and the great Santos Savino on drums. And Curtis came out. We played a couple of gigs, one private jazz party, and he was asking me about that mouthpiece. He said, "Aren't you the one that gave Bird that horn?" He says, "Yes, I remember playing with Bird with that white mouthpiece." And it's still in pictures out of Birdland. That stupid horn, Joe.
Wow.
I mean, you think about it. You got to have something to sound good with. This guy was like from another planet. You know.
So it wasn't the only thing he asked you for, right, Jimmy? He asked, quote unquote, get me 2 broads, right?
Yeah, the Adlers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were famous for hanging out with Mr. B, Billy Eckstein, and Buddy, all of the guys that came through Youngstown. So I got a hold of
Jimmy
Johnny
was
Adler.
15 years old at the time, by the way. Jimmy
Yeah,
was
15 years old. Think about it. And my dad allowed me to drive the car. You have to be 16, but I had no license. So anyway, I did get Bird what he needed. He got arrested, Joe. I don't know if you knew Orlando Vertello.
Sure, yeah.
He was the sheriff. And he knew me and my family, so he did call me up and he said, he knew nothing about jazz. He says, "I got this black guy down here says he's going to work for you at the Copa." I said, "Who? Charlie Parker?" He said, "Yeah, that's his name." He said he got arrested for indecent exposure. In other words, he's staying at the Todd Hotel, Joe, leaving the door open and inviting anybody who would come in. So they arrested him. And now here I am stuck, maybe in the early afternoon, and I got to get into my dad's car and go down to pick him up and bring him back to the hotel and go through that scenario, you know. And I got him off because I knew Orly. So that was the scenario with Bird. But I'll tell you one thing, Charlie. When he showed up to play 45 minutes late, at the Copa, jam-packed, and he stood behind the band. It was a big stage. He had Joe Cooper on bass, Shedrick Hobbs, and Rudy Black from Pittsburgh. And he stood behind the band against the wall, and they were up front. I'd never seen anything like that. Joe, it sounded like a recording.
Wow.
I mean, when he played Donna Lee and Fast As You Can Play it in Cherokee, man, I'm going, where's this guy come from? Anyway,
so you didn't waste a whole lot of time getting your feet wet in the deep end of the pool playing with some of the great jazz bands and jazz musicians. Billy Mays band when you were age 15 to 16.
Yeah, Willie Smith was on that band, the great Willie Smith on lead alto, who threatened to hit me in the mouth if I didn't follow his slurping Billy Mays style. You remember Billy Mays, Lean Baby?
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't know what he was doing. I was doing my thing. He said, "If you don't follow me, I'm gonna knock you on your ass." Willie Smith. I don't know if you remember him, Joe.
I do not.
Was that Willie the Lion Smith? Was that the guy they called Willie the Lion Smith?
No. Just Willie Smith. He was with Ellington, Basie, everybody. He's not Willie the Lion Smith. No, just Willie Smith. He did jazz at the Philharmonic with Flip Phillips, Charlie Ventura, Ben Webster, and Roy Eldridge. Willie was part of the the Philharmonic group. So that was my first encounter with somebody threatening to hit me.
So we're jumping ahead to New York now, and this is going to resonate with a lot of jazz musicians in New York. You were getting lessons for a while with Hall Overton, and he was letting you slide for $10.
Yes, the Avenue of the Americas, six floors up, carrying my tenor, going on a subway through the Pachuco district. I was living on East 118th Street, and I had gone to Juilliard for 3 months. He allowed me, because I came from Ohio State University. I was a terrible student in history. I couldn't even spell history.
Pick the phone up, Jeff.
The teacher at Ohio State said, I got to get out. I said, I don't care about the Whigs, the Tories. I don't care about that shit. Leave me alone. So he said, I got a guy in New York. If you want to go to New York, dear friend of mine, Hall Overton. So he got me into Juilliard, Joe, for 3 months. I ran out of money. I got no more money. He said, well, you want to come and study privately with me? We got a workout shop on Saturday. You can come twice a week. And of course, all of the greats were there. Teddy Kotick, Teddy Stabulous, Nick Charles, Phil Woods. That's where I met Phil. And, it was quite a workshop. And there again, only in New York. If I was in Wyoming, I would have been Jimmy Mulidore, the farmer. Because I was in New York. When you get exposed, you become a victim of what you're trying to do. And yeah, Hall Overton was the guy. He was the main guy. He taught Thelonious Monk. He taught Bud Powell. He taught everybody. He was phenomenal with his theory and musical harmonies and insistence on excellence. So yeah, David, that's where it started.
Yeah, he did the arrangements, I think, for Monk's Town Hall concert, didn't he, with the big band? So,
right.
So this is serious stuff for a young. You're still a teenager at this stage, right?
Yeah, 17.
17, and then you mentioned this is another one that's going to jump out. There's a lot of jazz fans listening in, and jazz musicians listening in, and I'm going to call them out shortly, but I don't want to lose the thread here for now. Junior's Bar and Grill, where you befriended and became close friends with Scott LaFaro.
Scott, we were on the Buddy Morrow band. And of course, again, when you live in New York, you find out where all of the greats hang out, which at that time was Junior's Bar and Grill. And when you go there, I worked with every band there is. Weekend bands, pickup bands, Stan Kent, Woody Herman, Buddy Morrow, Ralph Martiri, Jimmy Dancing Shoes Palmer, which I was on the band with Zoot Sims, of all things. Think about that. And, and Scott LaFaro was on the Buddy Morrow band. So yeah, we became friends. What a great bass player, and unfortunately he died early
Yeah.
accident. But he did get me on the 2 weekends with Chet Baker in New Jersey.
Yeah, I saw that. You were 18 or 19 at that stage, right?
Yeah, it was
Amazing.
the tenor player was Phil Urso, Urso, and I forget the bass player's name, but they came into juniors and they didn't know who I was, but they know who Scotty was, and they said, "Scotty, we want you to come play with Chet." Both of his guys got busted for marijuana, and he says, "We need a tenor player." So, well, how about Jimmy right here? So that was how I got to play with Chet, and he was scashad, Joe. he was not all together there and on those weekends. Of course, he did what he did. We all know what he did. So,
So, how old were you when you moved to Las Vegas first?
I moved here in September in 1957. I was 19.
19. Okay, so I'm going to these mightn't be in actual sequence, but there's some of the stuff. Red Norvo band, you were subbing for Jerry Dodgen. So
Red Norvo, the worst human being ever lived.
Look at your phone.
No, it was Scotty and I. Scotty and I met up here a few days apart, and we found out where the guys were playing, which was the Black Magic on Paradise and Tropicana Avenue. And everybody went there. Sarah Vaughan, Eartha Kitt, every star, Billy Eckstein, Sammy, they hung out there after their gig. That was the place. So this one night I showed up, and me and Scotty, we got up, and we had Carl Fontana, the great Carl Fontana was on trombone. Frank Strazzeri from Buffalo.
That's a name we all know, yeah.
Well, Frank was incredible. He was on piano, and we had a great and Scott, and a drummer, and me and Carl Fontana. And I was standing there, and Scott just started to play by himself. And if you know anything about Scott LaFaro, well, it was like E.F. Hutton. When he plays, you listen. So he started to play Pent Up House. I don't know if you know the tune.
Yeah, yeah.
But not at that tempo. Almost twice as fast on bass. Everybody in the room went, holy God. And from that, we just tore everybody up. And, of course, after the set was over, I got approached by the wonderful Jerry Dodgen. I think he still lives in New York. Jerry Dodgen.
I'll just interrupt you for a minute because your daughter, Lisa, just posted and said, "Hey, Dad, sit back so we can all see you."
Okay.
Right.
And Lisa's in London right now.
Lisa's in London.
Yes.
So pause that thought on Jerry Dodgen, and I'll just read out a few people who are looking in. These are in Ireland: Brendan Doyle, Jerry Fehely, Benjamin Dwyer, classical guitar player in Ireland, and then John Daly, who, Joe, you've talked to John a few times recently. John organises a jazz festival in Ireland, and he says, wow, this guy has seen and done it all, would love to spend time alone talking with him. He has to come to Ireland. So maybe if you're on your way over to visit Lisa,
tell him to get in touch with Joe Donofrio. Joe knows what to do.
There you go, John Daly. Get in touch with Joe Donofrio. Great guitar player, friend of mine, Dave White, says amazing memories, Jimmy. Dave, we're only getting going. You have no idea. You have no idea what even just the musical stuff alone this man has done. So Neil Lazar says, hey guys, Barry McCormick. Howard Paul is watching in Savannah, Georgia, originally from the Atlantic City area. Joe knows him very well. Chris Colleton. And that catches us up.
John Mulhern.
John Mulhern is there as well. Yeah. Hey, John. How you doing? Great guitar player. So Jerry Dodgen had to go in the military for a while, and he asked you to sub for him.
12 weeks, yeah. He had to go for almost, whatever they called it. But he said, I got to go. He was in the Air Force, yeah. And of course,
We lost you for a minute there.
you want me to continue on about Jerry Dodgen?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Jerry is a wonderful, fine, top of the notch alto saxophone player. Played with Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, everybody in New York. They're friends of Phil Woods and so on. But and he loved the way I played, and I was just 19. But I had been out playing Joe since I was 12 years old, and specifically in all of the black jazz clubs in the Youngstown, Sharon area. Because, again, you go back to what you mentioned, my dad, David. This guy allowed me to do this at early ages and drive his car, brand new Oldsmobile, which he almost killed me with one of the pianists, Ray Vulnerable, talked me into letting him put a pile of coal in his trunk, in my trunk. And of course, you know what coal looks like in a brand new car.
Yeah.
My dad almost killed me. But anyway, I got to playing with all these clubs, and every band that came into Idora Park, the Elms Ballroom, so on. I had the Joe, where'd you go? Joe, can't see you. Oh, there you go. I don't know what, like I told Joe a week ago, where the hell did I come from? Where did I get the guts to walk up to Lionel Hampton and invite him over to the Sharon line to come over and eat chitlins and play jazz? Think about it. What do I know about chitlins? Do you know what chitlins are, David?
I do. I tried them. I couldn't get with them at all. I have to say, I couldn't eat chitlins.
And you go there, and the Duke Ellington band, Lionel, Count Basie, we always wind up on the Sharon line, and of course, that's where I got my playing beginnings, listening to Johnny Hodges, Paul Gonzalez, Lockjaw Davis, all of the greats, Marshall Royal. I never forget Marshall Royal. You'll appreciate this, David. He never looked me in the eyes. He looked at my hairline. Marshall Rowe, the alto player, who was ball. I said, "What are you looking at my hairline for? What's the matter with you?" With Marshall, he's a great guy. But anyway, that's where I got all my experience playing in with those fellows in also in Youngstown at the 40 Club. 40 Club because it was 40 stairs to climb up to. And
the other thing that people don't realize about if you moved from state to state, this happened to Nelson Riddle when he moved out west from the East Coast. You had to put in 3 months residency without working.
Correct.
Right. And you had to do that in the Las Vegas local. The other way around it was you were part of a traveling band coming to town, and there was a 10% traveling tax taken. Right? That's what you said in the book. But if you were officially moving to a place, you had to have enough money to live without working for 3 months. Or
talk to James Moody about that. James Moody had to do that. The great James Moody could not play for 3 months.
You hooked him up, right? You took care. He was your hero, right?
And in a lot of ways, I was his protege, and there was nothing we wouldn't do for each other. I even got him when Moody moved here, he said, I'm moving, we're talking about the 3 month period, but I have to elaborate. I'm moving here because I want to learn how to play all of the other instruments like you. I said, well, you're not going to be able to play like me because I was raised on clarinet. You don't even own a clarinet. You're never going to be able to play clarinet like I play. He tried. He said, well, you watch, but he couldn't get the sound. He sounded like a kazoo. And but at that time he studied for 3 months. I never seen anybody practice so much. And he said, how do you play flute? Now here's a guy voted #1 jazz flute player on Playboy magazine, the other Downbeat, and he's asking me, I'm coming to Las Vegas to learn how to play flute like you. Now come on, man. You're voted #1 jazz flute player. He said, I don't know anything about the flute. Think about that, Joe.
Amazing.
Don't know anything about the flute. And of course, we help each other. And he opened many doors musically for me. And I opened a lot of doors with instructions on the other instruments. He couldn't understand how I could play jazz bassoon. Well, because of where I came from, in Youngstown, there was a fellow named Dick Healy who played with the Australian Jazz Quartet. And I was a pain in the ass with Dick. I kept bugging him up for the Bill Holman charts, this and that. And he finally said, well, if you want to play with the group, go find a bassoon. All right. So I knew a black guy that was going to University of Youngstown. David, do you think I had any money for a bassoon?
Not in those days, probably. They're an expensive instrument.
Steal me a bassoon out of the room there. I'll give you $50. So I wound up with a Conn bassoon for $50. And I learned how to play it, and I wound up playing at the Loop Lounge in Cleveland with the Australian Jazz Quartet. And they were great. They were famous. I don't know if you remember them. They were fabulous. So and Moody said, how the hell do you play bassoon? Well, it's in bass clef. That's different than G clef. But I mean, again, I asked Joe, where the hell did I come from? Where did I get this kind of drive? Why was I just determined to be the greatest, what you call a doubler of all the instruments that ever lived? And you know what, David? I am egotistical. I am the greatest woodwind player ever lived. I don't care what anybody says. I can stack up against anybody. You listen to my clarinet records? Hello?
Well, I'm a guitar player, so I can't challenge you. I can't return the challenge. But it's a dying art. Having in New York, you'll find guys that get smart enough to realize the more doubles that they can cope with, the more attractive they are to an arranger, especially in the woodwind section. Yeah. You have guys that'll.
But that's only to play parts.
Yeah.
You're not talking about playing jazz.
Okay.
We're trying to play jazz on a bassoon.
I've only heard one or two guys do it. Yeah. It's not an easy instrument to play.
Right.
So we're going to another question on the 3 months or a memory. Just how strict this was. Going back to, you had earlier connections. You lived your grandmother lived next door to the Naples family. They were the local Youngstown mob, and Billy Naples called Jimmy Hoffa's assistant to try and get you past this 3 month thing. And
it's funny.
And even they couldn't, with all the influence that the Teamsters Union had.
It was a totally different situation. The musicians local was not connected to the Teamsters. Now, at one time, Billy Naples was going to kill me because I was hanging out with his girlfriend, and I didn't know it. He threatened my life. And for him to overcome that and call, this is the kind of people that they were, the Naples. We were like family. One moment they want to kill you, next moment they'll die for you. So when he called the Teamsters, I really appreciated that. But he did come back and say, I can't do a thing for you. Can't do it. And
so I will be bringing up occasional references to interludes with certain ladies along the way. But I made a decision in starting this when I saw there's a part of Americana here that my jazz musician friends this will give you an idea how our minds work. Why would I waste my time talking about the easy pathway, the gossip column stuff, when I could be talking about this, right? I want to, but I will ask some questions later on. But you got here. This is a kind of a tough one because your daughter's listening in now, so I have to be a gentleman, and so do you. And
no, she doesn't care.
This Milton Berle gave you some advice early on involving cologne, right? So what I'm going to say to that is, instead of us talking about it, get his book and read it. right? We're living in an age now where people are trying to find hand sanitizer all over the place. There's the book, The Vegas Player, and look at my version of it. Look, see if I can get it to the camera. Look at all. I can't get it to go on camera. I've got pages.
You had it.
I have
You had it.
Let's see. Yeah, see all the pages sticking out of it. All the notes.
Wow.
That's called research, right? There's a so. Anyway, I think you should buy the book to read that one because we don't need to go there. But you're playing.
David, they have to order it on JimmyMulidore.com, not Amazon, because they keep the money. I get nothing. Thank you.
Okay. You hear that now? JimmyMulidore.com. We'll type that in a little bit to show that's where you order the book, and it comes with a DVD, right? It's which you're going to see a little bit of here in a little bit later. But now this is where we get into some of the good stuff here. All your horns were in the band room of the El Rancho. It was. I'm guessing it was a wood structure, basic wood structure. Lisa, by the way, has typed in JimmyMulidore.com for anyone who wants to see it written down. So, the El Rancho went on fire, and who was it? Jimmy the Weasel was the guy you said in the book set the fire at El Rancho, or gave the order. But all your horns were destroyed. And in those days, there was a fund put together to help the musicians who lost their instruments. And even people started skimming money off the fund, right? Did we lose him?
Lost you, Jimmy. Hello, Jim.
He must have moved into a... You there, Jimmy? See what happens the minute I mention El Rancho. We lost him. His battery might have died. He'll come back on, I'm sure. So while we're trying to figure that out with Jimmy, I'm going to play something from. We lost, just for everyone, like Lisa saying, "Dad, we lost your face." We lost the feed actually from him, Lisa. He's on his phone, and maybe the battery died or something if he's not plugged in. But just while we're waiting, and if he comes on, we'll interrupt whatever I do here. We'll just show a little clip, which we can pause at any time. Where is the... Okay, menu. Of course, that's the other thing. Is this going to take forever to load now?
So while we're waiting, I have to tell you how I met Jimmy. Oh, you got it.
No, you got. Do you want to say something, Joe? Will I pause this?
Sure. How I met Jimmy. Jimmy's 6 years older than I am, and he looks fabulous for his age. It makes him 82. But his mother and father lived, they moved from where he was raised to where I was living with my mom and dad, and they lived right around the corner from my mother and father. And everybody in Youngstown knew Jimmy Mulidore. We knew all about him and all the things he's done, and he's very well known. And I had never met him. So in 1964, I was able to go to Las Vegas, and I was 20 then. And my dad actually knew someone that was that knew somebody at the Stardust, and they got us comped. We thought we were, doing real good with life. We got to go to Las Vegas, and we stayed at the Stardust, and back then, even in the lounges, they had celebrities, like Don Rickles, and you could see anybody in the lounges that are now showroom people. But at any rate, Jimmy was the conductor for Jerry Lewis. And I could see he's not back on yet, so I'll keep yakking.
Yeah.
Conductor for Jerry Lewis, and I was a big Jerry Lewis fan. I love Jerry Lewis. And so we got to meet Jimmy. And I said, Jimmy, you know what? I know you're the conductor. Boy, I would like to meet Jerry Lewis. He not only introduced me to him, he brought him out. We were in the casino. He brought him out and brought him right up to us. And we had a chance to meet him and talk to him. And I was so impressed at that time. I said, wow, Jimmy was the guy. He really took care of us. And then as time went on, Jimmy.
Where he's back on.
Back.
We got everything.
Back.
My phone passed away.
I figured the battery had run out, was it?
I got 5%, but at least I got back on.
Well, could you plug it in?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's plugged in.
Plugged in. Okay.
I was just telling everybody how I met you and how you introduced me to Jerry Lewis.
And your
God.
daughter Lisa is saying how much she loves the fact that you knew her grandparents.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful people. Absolutely.
Joe Donofrio's like family. Joe Donofrio like my brother.
Thank you.
He's been very good to me too, but I have to keep him on his toes. I told him he's got to ramp up the guests now. We got to get some good guests, and who does he get me? He gets me you. So he's doing his job. Joe's I talk a good fight with Joe, but I saw those big boxing gloves in your office belonging to either Ali or Fraser or both of them. I think there's one of each of them. So I'm not messing with Joe.
I'm as gentle as a lamb.
So we had just started it. This is when you disappeared. I thought it was timing. When the El Rancho got burnt down and all your horns were destroyed in the fire, and somebody decided to raise money for to pay for the musicians who lost all their equipment. And even that fund got skimmed off by guys, right?
We got $200. It made a ton of money, and the guys got $200 a piece. So nothing is honest. Nothing. I mean, they use people, so on and so forth. But I'll never forget who burned that hotel down with Jimmy the Weasel. Fradiano. Think about that, Joe. 4 o'clock. Why does everything happen at 4 o'clock in the morning? Hospital calls me, says your mother died at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why at 4 o'clock? Why did you call me at 8 o'clock at night? Because it's bullshit. So Jimmy the Weasel burned the place down at 4 in the morning.
Where you going, Jim?
Joe, and fortunately, I was well known enough. I went to work quite quickly after that, David. And I wound up at the New Frontier Hotel playing Harold Minsky's Follies. There's not a bunch of donkeys in there. There's some pretty nice ladies in there.
Well, this is where I'm going with the next question now. Anyone who watched Casino remembers Sharon Stone's character.
There you are.
Yeah. So Sharon Stone's character, I don't know what they called her in the movie, but it's based on, or is, Jerry McGee.
Jerry McGee.
Right?
Jerry McGee.
So you began an affair with her. It was, is that what you would call it? Was it a serious affair? Had you guys got plans or?
Well, David, I have to be careful because sometimes I sound like an egotistical maniac, but I just say it the way it happened. If it comes out egotistical, then so be it.
Say it the way it happened, yeah.
But I mean, I could at that time have just about any, I'll call it bra, any girl I wanted, and I looked at her, and I, more or less we connected, and she was quite different than what I was brought up around Youngstown, of course. Ladies out here, Hollywoodish, that did everything from drugs to bisexual to everything else. That was her. Plus being what they called in those days a chip, CHIP, hustler. A lot different than being a hooker. I mean, she'd go on stage, look absolutely fabulous. 5'11", perfect body, face to die for. And here comes these schmucks from Iowa. They go into the lounge, and the girls would have a job to do to hustle chips. And they go around, sit in the lounge, and she would be sitting there. And then all of a sudden, some yo-yo would come up and think he was going to get lucky with her and take her to the crap table. And $100 chips would be going half on the bet and half into her purse. And at the end of whatever the session was, she'd excuse herself to go to the restroom, walk out of the hotel, and this guy sitting there with his thing in his hand, thinking he's going to get lucky, and she's already gone. Well, we were living together, and I was living with her, and then she'd come home and throw tons of $100 chips on the tables. Take what you want. Well, why not? And so that involved, then she began to bring ladies home, and I could never get into that. I kept laughing all the time. So eventually I got tired of that. But when I saw that she wound up with Frank Rosenthal, I said, oh, God mercy. She was a tough woman, tough. And Sharon Stone did exactly a perfect description of her in the movie. She was perfect.
It was a great piece of acting. People discovered she could really act in that movie.
Woo!
That's when they first people started talking about her, and it shook off the mantle of the Basic Instinct movie for her. That people thought
right.
that
I agree with you.
So was it before that, or was it after that you had been married to people in? When I read the book, I said, I know that name sounds familiar. Can't be the same person. You were married very young to Amy MacDonald.
Yes,
she's a huge star in the
Lisa's
UK.
Mother.
That's Lisa's mom. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were so much in love. I fell in love with her. She was 16. I think I was 18. She would never miss a day writing to me. And she was head over heels over me and vice versa. And we got married. And then here comes Grandma Moses from Scotland. They thought, and she couldn't understand why she would be involved with a peasant Italian who came out of the poorest section of Italy. You can come out of a place called Prague, Craig, like Craig, but Prague.
She may be listening in, so
I hope so. Well,
yeah.
the mother.
That's what Lisa said. Careful, she may be watching.
Lisa knows that story. Lisa knows that story. We don't hold anything back from each other. We're honest with each other. And here comes Grandma Moses, and she basically got her daughter to hate me, and that was into that. That's into that. So that's why we didn't continue on with a marriage, but it was beautiful while it lasted.
And so, just to mention that Lisa, it was only afterwards I realized when I saw she mentioned that we were going to be doing this, I realized, wait a minute, this is the lady that I've read. She was, an email would go out or a message would go out. She was casting various shows in the UK, and I had become friends with her on Facebook, Lisa, right? Maybe in the last few years, and I would have known you then as being a mutual friend of Joe. I think that's how I. But what people don't know, and I didn't know until I was talking to Joe, Lisa was one of the gorgeous ladies in the Benny Hill show back in the day. Yes. So, absolutely. And then Amy MacDonald, of course, is a huge celebrity in the UK BBC. There's videos of her, and you can see the connection with the Vegas style production when. In the days when people still paid in the BBC or whatever for a large band or an orchestra and dance, dance troops and all that kind of stuff, that nowadays you did stuff with strings later on, Jimmy. One of the most frequent questions I face when I'm writing for strings is, do you really need all those strings? Do you really need that many? They're always trying to cut you down to save money. Staying with the ladies for a minute, this is another one that jazz fans will resonate with, I guess. Diane Carroll introduced a lady who was getting over her ex-husband to you, and that then Miles Davis's ex-wife Frances.
Well,
So, right?
yes. Anyway, David, if I may follow up on that. Again, I'm at the Sands Hotel, which Joe mentioned when he came, and I brought Jerry Lewis out to meet him and his family. I was, and again, I will call it like it is. If the people listening think I'm egotistical, I am. I deserve to be, because nobody was having a life like I had. So if you don't like it, then you don't like it. I don't care. Anyway, I was the guy at the Sands. When I say I was the guy, Antonio Morelli, the band leader from Rome, was the most hated band leader on the Strip, including Frank Sinatra. We'll get to Diane Carroll yet. So he hated Antonio because he was not allowed to bring in Gordon Jenkins, Klaus Ogerman, or Quincy Jones, because Antonio Morelli would not allow it. Now, you would ask yourself, well, who the hell is Antonio Morelli? Well, start with the famous M word, mafia. And if you know what mafia means, that's in the story's over. If Antonio says you're not coming there with Klaus Ogerman, you're not coming in there. So Frank hated his guts. Okay, now we move on. Why was I?
I'm just going to interrupt you there on that. Sorry, there is people. I knew the name, but a few years ago, the Sinatra estate released a box set called Las Vegas. They did London, and on the Las Vegas box set, there is actually one of the discs is Sinatra singing with Morelli's orchestra.
That's me.
Are you in that band?
Absolutely, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I never liked Frank. Frank was a prick. And because of Antonio, he didn't like us. So this is where it gets kind of, how would you say? I am what I am. So I went up to Antonio. I had a chance to go to Japan with Georgie All and his all-stars, Sweet Edison, Chet Baker, Carl Fontana, Carson Smith, to go to Japan, and Antonio let me off for that 2 times. Then when I got back, I asked him to do the Las Vegas show with Bill Dana, who was the world's worst interviewer. I think he had no brain cells at all, Bill Dana. He couldn't even say hello. So we did 4 weeks of the Las Vegas show TV, which turned into be Laugh-In. That was with Jack Sontag and so on. And again, I'm talking about the favoritisms that Antonio Morelli would allow me. So he allowed me to do that. So finally, when I finished that show, I said, Antonio, I'm going to move on and go somewhere else. And he said, why? And I said, you bring, not him, but Red Skelton comes in here. He's on for 2 hours and 10 minutes. I got to pee. I can't sit on the stage. He said, well, get up and go pee. So you can imagine, they all come in there, Dean Martin, Sammy, Frank, and I get up and go pee in the middle of the show. And the guys in the band are going, what in God's name does he have that we don't have? So getting back to Diane Carroll, we were just dear friends. She was going with businessman Freddie Glussman. She married Freddie Glussman for 3 months. Of course, that didn't work out. And then she started to go with Vic Damone. So Diane Carroll and I were close friends. We always talked about Sarah Vaughan, Billy Eckstein, Sammy, so on and so forth. So one night she comes to me, she says, I got a surprise for you. Yeah? So what is it? So I'm bringing a lady in here tomorrow night from New York. Oh. She says, are you available? She said, it's my celebration at the Town Tavern near the Moulin Rouge on the west side of town. So she's coming into town. Well, Diane Carroll was the next door roommate of Miles Davis. So when Miles would beat the hell out of Francis Davis, she'd go over and hang out with Diane Carroll to escape Miles's craziness, because Miles was junking. He had a split personality, and he used to pound on Francis a lot. So anyway, here comes Francis Davis the next night. We go over to the Town Tavern. Diane Carroll always wanted to be white. She didn't like soul food. She didn't like anything to do with greens, collard greens, pork, chitlins, nothing. So that all of the food they were serving was thrown underneath the table. Well, Francis Davis and I, we were eating that food like crazy. And so, make a long story short, we wound up 2 weeks together. Probably the most sexiest woman I ever met in my life. And even Miles said, whoever gets Francis is getting a champion. I remember that very well. And believe you me, she was a champion. Unbelievable. And sadly, as it was, he screwed her out of Porgy and Bess, West Side Story, the jobs with Sammy Davis, saw all in New York, London. He made her quit, and she wound up with no pension and had to be a waitress in L.A. Thank you very much, Miles Davis. She wound up penniless.
That comes up, not the waitress part, but she in the recent Miles documentary that was shown, The Birth of the Cool, that's on Netflix. Yeah. She mentions the fact that that Miles didn't want her in West Side Story. She had to quit West Side Story.
Yeah.
And she did, she did what she was told.
In her prime, when she was in her prime, it's like Miles Davis is not going to go with some dog off the street. She came in with Catherine Dunham dancers. She had a body that 0 - 1 fat on it when she was, forget about it. That's why I am the biggest player.
Right. So your second marriage was to dodge the draft.
Yeah. Again, David, I had no part of Vietnam. I'm not going to go shoot at anybody. I'm playing my ass off. I'm at the El Rancho. I'm married to Lisa's mother, Amy. We're having a beautiful marriage until Grandma Moses came. And they called to draft me and to go into the Army. Well, we go all the way back to my next door neighbors, the Naples.
Right.
I go back and I see Sandy. I call him, actually. And I told him my situation. He says, come on back with your wife. So I go back there. And he says, show up at Northside Hospital, you and your wife, at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So I don't know what he's got in mind, but we show up. And he's got some other young girl there that is 3 months pregnant. She walks in with me and he says, this is Jimmy's wife. I don't know who the broad was. So I walk in. She takes the pregnancy test, passes pregnant, and we leave. A week later, I get a call from, what's his name, the county coroner, Vince somebody. Joe, you might know him. Vince, the hell, I can't think of his name. He was the county coroner in charge of the draft board. And so they got, they probably took my name off the top and put it on the bottom. And that kept me out of the service for about a year. Thank you, Sandy Naples. There you go.
So that was, what year was that?
It had to be, probably 1960, maybe 61.
Right. So
and then, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, with the Naples family was, because growing up in Ireland when the troubles were going on up north, we were used to hearing the expression car bomb. So I haven't heard it so much here, but Billy Naples was killed in a car bomb?
Yes, he was.
What year was that?
Maybe 63.
63.
He parked 5 miles away from his house. And they found out where he parked the car and see you later.
I think it might have been another year. I'm sorry.
Could be, yeah.
That's close. 62, 63, 64, somewhere in there. But that was the end of Billy. And
Lisa's saying maybe 64. She's got a 64 with a question mark. Do you know what I'm thinking here? Because I want to. One of the things I planned when I set out to do this is it's hard not to talk about this stuff and ask about it. But the danger when you do it is people forget the kind of musician that you are. So I want to remind them. Let's play some
Very
music.
good.
Can we do that? No. This is the thing. That's I could have. Joe, you know what I'm talking about. We could have. It would have been a very easy thing to just talk about the mob and what it was like in Vegas in those days. But I don't want
Very
people.
important. He's a great player, and
I don't want people to. I was. There's so many. It's the hard part is which one to pick. So I'm gonna play something off your DVD if I may.
Right.
And I'm gonna share the screen. So don't. This is at you, Jimmy Mulidore. Don't touch any buttons, right? Those, and let me pull out I have to get it lined up, ready to go, and we'll. This should be the splash screen first, right? Okay, just for a little bit of Las Vegas, I'm going to go to the. This is the first time I saw Charlie Parker being played with dancers. So this will give people a feel for the.
David, you're wonderful.
I'm just going to pause this now for a minute. We'll go. This is a. By the way, this is a lot of fun because it's bringing the music to the people in a way too that I can almost imagine. There would have been anything else that they wanted on a show in Vegas, and I can see this being you and the band leader making sure that some jazz got played to keep it interesting for yourself and the musicians. This, because I'm sure there was so many other things that the entertainment directors would have wished you chose. But have a look at this. Sorry, I need to unmute myself. You can hear me now?
Yes.
I'm going to pause this now because we're getting some questions, and I'm glad I took the time to do that now because we're only scratching the surface musically with him too, and by showing this. So what I want to do is read out what some of the people are saying. So first of all, John Daly saying, "Wow, swinging band, love it, go Jimmy." There's Dave White in Dublin saying, "Beastly playing, Jimmy, love it." I'm telling you guys, you haven't seen nothing yet. Mark Batchelor is asking, did did any British jazz musicians perform with you in Las Vegas, like Tubby Hayes?
No,
No. There's
not Tubby Hayes. No, but I've had other British musicians work with.
they probably would have had to go through the same kind of. They'd have to have the special arrangement with the union, and
Right.
when I moved here first, there was a very good relationship in those days between the New York Local 802 and the Irish Musicians Union. Without me even asking for it, somebody that you recorded with, Louis Belson, at one point, his manager, road manager Dick Abels, was a friend of mine, and he brought me down to the union. And I remember there was an older lady working there, and she just said, no transfer fee, and no. They were treating me as if I was an incoming. Because I was coming from Ireland, they were treating me specially because of a relationship between Ireland and the US at the union level. But Lisa is saying, somebody must have asked a question or something. Dad works out, plays golf, eats well, and plays jazz every day. So I know about the golf. That's going to come up in a few. I'm going to be asking you a few questions because early on in your life, you were. I think you learned how to play by being a caddy for a while, right, to make some money.
Yes.
Is that where you-
Yes. We had no money, and my dad would send us up 7 miles away to a Jewish country club called Squaw Creek Country Club. And of course, I'd come home with $4, $3, and that was great. And then I became a caddy champion, which was no big deal, but I did. And then I won a few tournaments around Youngstown, and I went to Ohio State on $80 to get into the school. That's all my dad gave me. That's what tuition was, $80. I had no money, so I wound up going. Italians don't go to fraternities. That Phi Kappa Lappa shit doesn't work with Italian people, And I wound up going to a fraternity just to be able to survive to stay there. And I went on a walk on the golf team. Well, it was 2 years before Jack Nicklaus and a year before Tom Weisskopf. And I got on as an alternate. But then we would probably in the practice rounds go on skill to country club. And I got to see Jack Nicklaus play a hole or two with us, be 5, 6, 7. And I saw where he was hitting the ball, and I saw where I was hitting the ball, and I said, no way, I'm out of here. So I went back into music. So that was the end of my golf professional career. I still play golf every day, but not.
So the job that you were offered to be was it right away you got in as musical director for the Las Vegas Hilton, or did you have to play in the band for a while first?
Oh no. After I finished the Rat Pack 8 years at the Sands with Frank, Sam, Deanie, and I got a lot of stories about Frank and those Rat Pack years. Joe knows. I became musical director for Dean Martin's The Girls Next Door. They were on a Dean Martin TV show. I got hired to be the conductor for that. And then I went into the lounge with Frankie Randall, who was the next door neighbor to Sinatra. And we were there for quite a while. And then the Bonanza Hotel was built. If you recall the TV show, The Bonanza.
Right.
That show?
Yep.
And so the owner was named Larry Wolf. And Joe Gershel and I, of course, we were dear friends at that time. We wound up bitter enemies. We were dear friends at that time. We went into the Bonanza Hotel. And the opening act was Lauren Green. Well, the Bonanza Hotel and the theme, whatever.
Yeah.
We were there for quite a while, and then this fat Jewish guy comes up to me and he says, I'm Larry Wolf. He said, what are we doing with that other guy over here, this Joe Gershel? He does nothing. And he says, you're doing all the work. Fire that son of a bitch. And I said, oh, no. He brought me in here. I'll go out with him. I'm not going to backstab him. No way. So we were there for about 8 or 9 months, and they bellied up. And I went to get my check, $6,500 for the band, and there was no check for me. And so I got stiffed. And I went to Joe Gershel, and I said, Joe, there's no money. I got to pay the guys. He said, it's your band. And I says, oh, that's the way they play this game, you know? And even as I moved over to the Hilton, I was loyal to Joe Gershel because Baron Hilton and Henry Lewin offered me many times to just kick him out of there and leave me as the band. I was the band leader because he didn't have a musician's card. But I would not turn my back on somebody that brought me in there. I can't do that. And so I kept my loyalties to him. But we took over in February of 1969, and it was called the International then. And it remained the International till 1971 when Hilton bought it. And then we acquired when I say we, Joe and I, we acquired the Flamingo Hilton Hotel along with the International. And that became Flamingo Hilton, Las Vegas Hilton. And I wound up at the Stardust because of, the hell's his name? Oh God, he owned the cab company in Las Vegas. Dear friend of mine, and he gave me the music at the Stardust for a while. And then I wound up with the music at the Union Plaza through Maynard Sloth, one of the great producers. You might know him, David. Maynard Sloth.
I don't know that name, no.
Song. He did all of those shows from Broadway, but he brought him to Vegas. And he gave me the band at the Union Plaza. And then he turns around and gives me the band at the Claridge in Atlantic City. I've never been to the Claridge. I've never been to Atlantic City. And here I am, the band leader at the Claridge. Buddy Greco comes up to me one day. He says, what's going on? He said, they're announcing the Jimmy Mulidore Orchestra in the Claridge Hotel. I said, well, I'm the band leader there, you know. So I had 6 hotels going all at one time, plus that Jimmy Mulidore string group. So, you know, I was making $250,000 a year. And of course, you get robbed by wives, ex-wives, family members, friends, and you wind up with your banana in your hand, you know. It's the way life is meant to be, I guess. I don't know. But that's how that Hilton came about. And of course, during the Elvis years, Joe Gershel was conducting for Elvis. And I was not permitted, I wouldn't say permitted, I would lose my job. I couldn't go out on the road with Elvis. So consequently, Joe would go out and he'd get $3,500 or whatever money he's made with Elvis. And Baron came to me one day, Baron Hilton, he says, are we paying Joe Gershel while he's out on the road with Elvis? I said, yes. He said, why? I said, well, that's between you and him. I said, I am. He said, well, fire him. I said, no. Doesn't work for me. You fire him, I'm out the door. No. I said, you have to work that out with him. So they went to him after Elvis died and demanded why he took that money while he was on the road with Elvis and tried to get him to conduct for the Hilton Strings before the show. And he was way above that. He didn't want to do it. So they fired him. And they hired me as with Jimmy Mulidore with strings, which I got a couple of albums on YouTube, fabulous music and so on and so forth. But that's pretty much the story of the Hilton Hotel. And lastly, the great Henry Lewin, the president of the Hilton, who was more Baron Hilton than Baron Hilton himself, Henry Lewin. And he loved me more than a son. I was his idol. Am I boring you?
No, keep going. I'll
No,
jump in
I
when I
was
have a
more like I
question.
was like his idol,
Hmm.
Henry Lewin, and he came to me near the end of his tenure, and he says they caught him trying to go with some young waitress. The guy that caught him, Henry had hired him to be in the Hilton. So they proceeded to get Henry fired. And then he warned me, he says, I'm going to be fired. And guess what? You're next because you're my boy and you're going to get fired, whether you like it or not. And here they come. And of course, at that time, they said, we'd like to see your books. I said, you would? I said, well, first of all, you can't see my books because I don't work for the Hilton. I'm a self-imposed contractor, self-employed. I'm like I'm a cleaning service here. I don't work for the Hilton. Well, if you don't show us the books, you're fired. So I called my attorney, the great Harry Claiborne, and he says, they want to see your books, quit. He said, you're done, whether you like it or not. You're already done. So that was it. That was into my tenure at the Hilton. And then we moved right over to the Sands. Henry became president of the Sands and brought me over to the Sands. So
I'm going to go back a little bit in the Hilton before, because there was a period where they were short-lived periods where they made you music director, and during that time, you were also expected to continue to do the Jimmy Mulidore strings for no extra money, right?
correct. Thank you, Dick Lane. Who, Italian people can be rotten, and I'm Italian. But Italian people, when they're jealous, forget about it. So now Dick Lane is making X amount of dollars. He knows that I'm making money up the yin yang from 6 hotels, plus the Hilton strings start at 6 o'clock and finish at 7:45. That is not included in my contract, though, things from 8 to 2. So he says, well, you don't work much at night, so I'm not going to pay you for your performance. Before I said, but you're cheating, man. I mean, if I call the union, he probably would fire me. So I went along with it for 4, 5, 6 years. I never got paid a nickel.
Something else that during that period, I'm a big fan of Bobby Darin. I thought he was very underrated.
Oh, Bobby.
And I'm looking at some of the guys you brought into the band to play with him. Eddie Lockjaw Davis, Monk Montgomery on bass. Wes Montgomery fans will know who Monk was. And Willie Perry. Was that a saxophone player? Was he?
Willie Perry, black guy, yes.
Yeah. So it was. Speaking of bringing an African American musician into Vegas, you brought James Moody in to play with Elvis. Now, how many people knew that James Moody was on stage with Elvis during those Vegas years?
Did you see those pictures, David? Did you see that picture with Moody?
I saw a few pictures that are in your book and that are also in the on the DVD.
There's a picture of me and Moody behind Elvis. But how that became possible was once they fired Joe Gershio, I became the man of the Hilton musically. But when I sat down with Baron Hilton, actually, when I first signed the contract, I did tell him, I said, Baron, I want nothing more than to be the musical director of the Hilton Hotel. But I do have one thing I really want to do, and I want to bring in black musicians in the Las Vegas Strip, which nobody ever did before. He says, no problem, go ahead and do it. So that's how I got to bring in everybody that was great. Harold Land. You remember Harold Land?
Yeah.
Harold Land was great. Harold Land, dear friend of mine. Lockjaw, Willie Perry, L. Aarons, Sweets Edison, Frank Butler, Dolo Coker. God, I can go on and on with the black musicians that I brought into Las Vegas. And they knew about that, the black guys, because basically I was raised with all blacks. My mother from a black neighborhood in Youngstown. I'm playing with blacks all my life, so I don't know anything about color. I went to Baptist church. I saw these big fat black ladies with that cheap perfume, with the tambourine singing when I was quite young. So I know the black culture, and I liked it. I liked the black food. I liked everything. So that's why I demanded that I could bring in, not trying to be Christopher Columbus, but I figured somebody's got to do it. And the time would come that blacks could play in Las Vegas. And I think I opened the door.
So that's well, the relationship with you and Moody was is something that jumps out in the book to me as being. But there was just going back a little bit to Elvis. He had a nickname for you that would make people think you were from my neck of the woods, probably. Right?
Muldoon.
Muldoon. He called Jimmy Muldoon. And you were saying in the book, sometimes he'd be ready to go on stage and he'd turn around and he'd look at you and he'd just crack up.
Oh, Elvis was like just a good old country boy that knew talent. He knew people that took care of business. He knew I was the guy that ran that band. He knew that I was the guy he could count on. And when I brought Moody in the band, he just loved it. Because, he was a Miles Davis fan. Elvis was.
Was he? Now, there's something I didn't know.
He loved Miles. He loved Miles. He loved the sketches of Spain. Most of Miles' early, the big band orchestras. He loved Miles. And, Elvis would come down to my dressing room to get away from people. Now, I got to tell you, David, I had a better dressing room than Elvis. Joe, did you ever come to my room?
No.
Oh, my dressing room, even Henry Lewis said, "What the hell, you got this goddamn, you got a room better than me," with this broken German. But he'd come down to my room, and during the break, we'd have a 2-hour break between shows. And he'd come in there, and I'd go upstairs in the coffee shop, and he'd lay on my couch and get away from people. And that would go on almost every night. And then eventually start bringing in turquoise jewelry from Arizona, some guy. I had all over my room. I mean, I had a bar. I had a wonderful big couch. You never seen a dressing room like that. And Elvis loved to hang out there because nobody could find him. And he would come down and hang out in my room, and I'd go upstairs. I wouldn't be in there while he was there.
Well, I was telling a friend of mine who was a big fan of, that Vegas period with Elvin, and all I had to mention was, by the way, the guy I'm going to be talking to, he played the flute. He's featured in a flute solo at the end of the American Trilogy songs. He played that. He knew exactly what I was talking about. So now I'm going to let's go to a clip. I want to play another jazz clip later with you before people, because there's so much good stuff for you. But let's play them the clip with Elvis, and in this, he actually mentions how every night, the fact that he would call out a musician like this and give him props. At one point in an interview, he says 144, but at this particular point, he says he's played this thing 125 times already, and he's never missed it once, right?
That's right.
So
more than that. Yeah.
But he'll, and it's going to take a minute for this to come up.
Before you go there, David, I got to tell you the phenomenal story of one night. I was not a marijuana smoker. And once in a while, my baritone player, Kenny Hing, who worked with Count Basie, he came in one night and he said, "Take a couple of puffs out of this reefer, marijuana." Well, I took a couple of puffs and I went blank. When I mean blank, all I could see was lights. It happened twice with me. Once with Louis Belson when I was working with Lou Rawls, Sweet Edison at the Thunderbird. I smoked some reefer and I just couldn't handle reefer. So anyway, comes time and I look at Joe Gershio and I said, "I can't play that solo." He said, "What do you mean you can't play that solo?" I said, "I'm too messed up. I cannot play that solo." And he said, "Well, get with one of the other guys." "No, they don't want no part of that solo." I mean, because, you know, the whole world stops for 32 seconds. And you got Elvis staring at you 2 feet away, squirting you with a water gun. That's why I got my little gizmos, still have them there. Squirting you with a water gun, red west, sunny west on the other side, squirting you with a water gun. And he's trying to get you to miss that solo. That's the kind of guy Elvis was. Comical. And nobody in the sax section wanted any part of that solo. So if we're getting near the solo, Joe looks at you going to play it? I said, I can't play. He said, who's going to play it? Nobody wanted it. So I told the guy next to me, Tony Osiki, I said, punch me in the leg and tell me to stand up. Because I mean, David, you can't imagine, you know, how far out I was because of that marijuana. And I said, just touch me and tell me to stand up. So the guy touched me and I got up. I don't remember 1 second of playing it. Then he touched me in the leg and I sat down. And at the end of the thing, Elvis says, ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy Muller never missed a note. And I'm going, did I play it? He said, you all played it perfect. I don't remember ever playing that solo. So that's how important that solo was. Sorry to interrupt you there, but I needed to put that in there.
No. That's a good story for them to hear. I'm still a little taken aback from the whole idea that Elvis was a huge Miles Davis fan and had sketches of Spain. And
oh yes,
right.
Yes.
Where else would we hear this but from somebody who was hanging out with him in the dressing room where he would?
Well, you know, David, if I make you laugh here for a second, there's a great alto saxophone player, Kenny Garrett. Are you aware of him?
Oh yeah, we all know Kenny Garrett. Yeah,
Kenny Garrett, great saxophonist, and his introductions to his shows when he tours are, ladies and gentlemen, the last living saxophonist to play with Miles Davis, Kenny Garrett. So now when his pianist, Vernell Brown Jr., was telling me, he says, when you get introduced, they should say, the last living guy to make love to Miles Davis while he was married. and we told that to Kenny. He fell down on the floor with laughter. It's just a joke.
Yeah.
I mean, it was true. You know, at that time, of course, Miles married Cicely Tyson and then somebody else. But at that time, it was funny.
Yeah. It's so what's that? Dave White saying, hilarious story, Jimmy. Well done for getting through that solo. Why don't we just play it? Let people see that. And by the way, this is a good time. If you had it written into your contract, or not even written in, but understood that if you needed to take a pee break or anything like that, you have as long as this medley takes. You need to do anything. We just lost Joe, and I got clever earlier on. I went during the previous one. So, too much information for the audience out there. But, by the way, Lisa said you gave me lots of turquoise jewelry. So, some of the stuff she has, did that come via Elvis?
Elvis, exactly. That was all from Elvis.
There you go, Lisa. You probably knew that already, though, right? You know. So, okay, let's go to... speaking of Elvis, let's go to the American trilogy. Is that what it was called? There was
yes.
a medley. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Is anything happening?
Oh, I wish I was at a land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Sing it, fellas. Oh, I wish I was in jail. in Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixieland. I was born early Lord, one frosty morn. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Holy glory, hallelujah. Holy glory, hallelujah. His truth is mercy. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. You know your daddy's bound to die. But all my trials, Lord, soon be over. Thank you very much. You should applaud for yourself because you're... I'd like to tell you one thing about the flute player that did the solo. He's done it 125 times and never missed it once. Jimmy Mulder. Jimmy?
So that's from the horse's mouth, right? It's
By the way, Joe,
Yes.
his right-hand man there, did you know him?
Alex
He had the
Brigetti.
same name, Joe Donofrio. Elvis's right-hand man.
Who's that?
Elvis's right-hand man. I'm pretty sure he had the same name as yours, Joe Donofrio.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you'll see him if you ever watch that again. He's always, they were in the Army together, and Elvis just loved him as a friend, and he stayed with Elvis all that time.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, and I do have, when Elvis couldn't remember the lyrics on songs.
Mm-hmm.
When we grew up, Pete Smith special between the big movie. They have sing along. You don't remember that, Joe, do you? Before you?
No.
They had a sing along, and on the screen would be the lyrics, like I jumped around the farm or whatever, but would be a marble that would go on the word. I jumped, and the marble would follow the word, and you'd follow the marble and sing the song. So we got a new song for Elvis, and he comes to rehearsal and he can't remember the lyrics. So Joe looks at him, he says, Joe Gershaw, why don't you follow the marble? He says, follow the marble. That's Pete Smith special. And he sent, I still have it on my wall here. Dear Joe, follow the marble. Guess who? Yeah,
while you're talking about Elvis, you should maybe mention the story with Alex Rigetti, who was from Youngstown.
Oh yeah, Alex was he was part of the security team, and Alex was gun ho. You didn't have him say twice to Alex about wanting to get into a fight. He wouldn't back down from anybody.
No.
So at one time there was a group.
He was a bass player. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was a group walking around. They were just coming into shows and causing problems. They were karate guys. You know, Elvis was into karate. And they came and sat ringside. And middle of the show, they thought they'd get cute and get known, and they'd come up and maybe threaten Elvis and try to challenge him to karate. Well, my brother-in-law, Alex Rigetti, was on his side. You know, he was part of this. There were 2 or 3 of them. He came on stage and he grabbed one. He grabbed one of these guys, threw him on the floor, and kept the other 2. They decided, I'm not going to go into that. And so Elvis really felt good about him, stepping up and protecting him. So Alex, he got a ring from Elvis, a TCB pin, and some nice things. Elvis thought a lot of them. Matter of fact, I still got a picture with him and Elvis on my wall.
Yeah.
You know, something that I really like there as well in the footage, as he's getting ready to go on, you often see people where they're trying to get into the space that they're going to perform, and it's been made clear to some people, don't talk to him right now while there's people are saying something to him right before he goes on, right? While you can see Elvis is trying to get into the headspace, but somebody will say something to him and he looks around, smiles at them. He would snap out of it and get back into it again, which kind of tells me, because I like a lot of people, I remember waking up to hearing the news that Elvis had died, and he was before my time, right? When he was, but my older brothers would have been into him, I suppose. But I wouldn't have ever really paid attention to something like that. But how he is about to go on stage, trying to get psyched into the energy that you're going to have to give as the front man to that. A lot of people do not want anyone talking to them, right? Joe, you've come across this.
Yeah, you break the train of thought, what you're trying to accomplish. In other words, you're trying to get into the actual motif, the mood of what you got to do your performance. Yes.
But you can see that it's almost like, this is me kind of interpreting what I just saw. I know there's the kind of feeling that he didn't want to appear rude to whoever said something to him. He smiles at them, gives them. He did it at least 3 times in that short clip right before he went on. I want to ask you about a few other people that there was one guy who fancied himself as a vocalist. He was the hairdresser to the stars, right? Izzy, is that the guy? And he decides, the reason I picked this one out, a lot of the guys who play in wedding bands in Ireland would know this. There's always a point where somebody blames the band for whatever else is going on. And in this case, somebody who had connections lined up Izzy with an opportunity to be auditioned for the Johnny Carson show, right?
Oh
So you guys get flown out first class. Everything's right. And he freezes. He chokes, right?
Oh,
Right? He
oh
chokes
my
at
God.
the audition, and then he blames you guys.
Oh yeah, of course. Matter of fact, they didn't give us any money to come home on.
That's what I was coming to. After flying you out first class
Yeah.
and hotels, 2 suites in the hotel, now you got to make your own way back.
Joe can identify that, being around that all his life.
Oh yeah.
Izzy Marion.
The other name,
Throws me out, the
I
musical
almost
director. Huh?
sorry, I almost skipped over this too, and say we just mentioned it briefly because I don't want to put you anywhere you don't go. But Anne Margaret was somebody else during that period who came into your life, and so you had a connection with Anne Margaret, right?
More than that. I mean,
A 4-year connection or a 3-year connection, was it?
6.
6, wow.
All right, it occurred, and I'm going to be very discreet, of course. It occurred right after her breakup with Elvis, doing Viva Las Vegas. Now, I'm a cocky cocksucker. And being from where I'm from and where I was, I mean, I'm a pretty hard guy to take. So she comes in a rehearsal. Now, I don't respect people that don't have talent. And so I didn't say she didn't have talent. I said, I don't respect people that don't have room. I mean, Sarah Vaughan's there. I'm not going to talk to her like this. Ella Fitzgerald's there. I'm not talking to her like this. So we get to rehearsal, and there's a couple guys in my band that are not playing right. Well, I'm very demanding. You're over here for a reason. I'm paying you. You better play. If you don't play, your ass is out of here. Don't let the door hit you in the ass. So I start coming down on a couple of guys in the band. She's standing to my right next to the piano. I still have pictures. If you go on my website and on my photos album, you can see her at rehearsal. And she didn't come in all dressed up, like makeup and all that shit. Regular. So she said, why are you so mean to those musicians? And I said, and again, you got to understand, I was so tight with Baron Hilton and Henry Lewin, nobody could mess with me. So having that power, knowing I can't get fired, I said, none of your fucking business. Just like that, which was not correct. Not really being, respectful. I know it now, but I mean at that time. So she says a couple other things, and she starts to sing "Stand by Your Man." Stand by your man, and all that.
Yeah.
She says, what do you think about that? I said, you sound like a dog fucking a football, your vibrato. I said, your vibrato is so slow. I said, I want to get there and pee on it. I said, come down to my room. I'll teach you how to sing a vibrato. I said, but don't ask me what I think about it because your vibrato is too goddamn slow. And she shows up in my room. I'm not expecting that at all. Matter of fact, the guys in the band were cringing. I made them cringe, because I'm talking to her like, what are they going to say? You sound like Ella Fitzgerald? No. So she shows up in my room, and I give her a lesson. And Joe would appreciate this word. The Tarandale began. 6 years. And it was, you've seen it in Sopranos. You've seen it in Godfather. Italian men are pricks. I was one of them. And when I mean a prick, you see, Joe is not like that. Joe is the gentleman's gentleman, got a gorgeous, wonderful wife. I wish I was like Joe Donofrio as far as demeanor and respect with women. But I'm not. I wasn't like that, right, Joe?
No comment.
I'm giving you a compliment. I mean, I'm trying to say that Jimmy Mulidore is not like Joe Donofrio when it comes.
Well, thank you very much, Jimmy. I appreciate that.
And I think the world of Joe Donofrio. Anyway,
can I go to one particular episode that you shared during that, which was when you were escorted to the balcony by two Samoan?
Oh my God! You cut all of the good parts out.
Well, yeah. I'm mindful of the fact that your daughter's listening in here, and
she knows the whole. My daughter is like, I could say anything in front of her. She's cool. She knows the whole story.
Okay, well, I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust you in that, and I'll let you go. But if you get into trouble with your daughter and say,
no,
that Irish guy started asking me all this shit, and it was his fault.
My daughter's the coolest thing in the world. No, my daughter is very cool. No, I got it. Of course.
All right, lift the lid and go for it.
All right, so I got threatened many times by her husband, Roger Smith. Great-looking guy, tough. Because he was gay, did not make him not tough. Working out all the time. I mean, he would come down to my room. He says, and I'd open the door and he says, so I warned you. I said, warn me about what? What? He said, well, let me tell you about me. So I'm wearing a $5,000 suit. I'm driving a BMW. I live in Humphrey Bogart's house. I'm married to one of the greatest stars in Hollywood. What do you have? I said, well, I'm fucking your wife. You know it and I know it. I said, if you don't like, go tell Baron Hill I'm fucking your wife. Well, of course he wouldn't. He wouldn't do that. And so anyway, that night, before the performance, she comes down to my dressing room. And she says, be careful tonight. We're filming the show. They had probably 20-some dancers in the show or more. We're going to show the show up in Elvis's suite on 2 different televisions. But be careful because Roger's on a warpath. He brought a couple of Samoan guys. What the fuck do I know about Samoan guys? I mean, these big guys, I'm big guys. I don't know anything, but I'm 5'11". So anyway, be careful. I said, what do you mean be careful? He's on a warpath. So I go up after 10 minutes after the event started. Pitch black. Nothing but the TV on. I walk in with my saxophonist, Tony Osiki, and the other guy that played with Count Basie, Kenny Hing, and my drummer, Tommy Check, who was standing in front of me at the moment I walked in. And Ann Margaret was up near the television, sitting on the floor. There were no chairs, with a bunch of the dancers and people, visitors, and a whole room full of people. And within 10 minutes, my saxophonist, Tony Osiki, says, holy crap. I said, what's the matter? She's sitting right below your leg there, your foot. And I look down and I can see it's her. And then she moves over and starts to rub her behind on my foot. Well, I mean, come on, we're having an affair for 6-7 years. I mean, that's not uncommon, but it's not kosher to Roger Smith, who she didn't realize was observing us with these 2 big Samoans. So, Joe, I get lifted up in the dark and I start to rise. I'm rising up. I'm getting off the floor. I'm going, good God. And I'm startled. I don't make any noise. And they escort me out of the room. And the only thing I did recall later on from Tommy Check, my drummer, he said, Roger Smith had a .45 aimed right at your cock. So oh, Maron, I mean, and that's all I need. Take anything you want, but don't take my goody. So they get me and they bring me up to the top of the Hilton, make a long story short, and they dangle me over the roof. Now, David, if you think a minute and a half is long, you haven't lived. And I'm over there, dang, these guys got me by the end of my foot. And I'm now, of course, I'm no longer on the planet mentally. I'm starting to imagine what God's, your mind starts to, what's it going to feel like? And I'm dangling over in a minute and a half, felt like a lifetime. And then they finally turn around to Roger and they say, what do you want to do? Bring him back up. So they bring me back up and he gave me a strict warning. You ever go around Ann again, you will never get a second chance. Now, my dad, who was raised with the mafia, and of course, the one that got me out of the mafia, Philip, was there with the 45 in his own pocket because I told him what was going to happen. And he says, I'll kill that motherfucker. Excuse, I got to say these words. I can't.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna kill that guy. He's not going to say, gosh. My dad doesn't use those words.
Right.
Gosh. So Tony Osiki would not give him the code to get off the elevator as I came down because I told him what had happened. He wanted to go up and start shooting around. So Tony would not give him the code to get off at the floor where Elvis was. Sweet one. So we went home. I got him out of there luckily, and we went home, and I tried to call her. We had a code name. Pick up the phone and say, connect me with Randy Milano. And it would ring her bedroom. And so the bedroom phone rang and her maid answered. And she said, hello. And I told her, this is Jimmy Mulidore. She says, oh, wait a minute. So she went and got her out of the room. Took a minute or two. She got on the phone. She said, where the fuck did you go? And I told her what happened. She said, that MF, that son of a bitch, and hung up the phone on me. Until the next morning. I'm home. My dad's over there in his protective mood, and I'm sitting there, and phone rings, and it's Roger Smith. Now, David, I went from a wimp. I was a wimp. I mean, you could have flicked a finger at me, and I would have fell over when that situation was occurring. I was so frightened to death. I didn't even know who I was. Now I'm back home and on my own turf, and Jimmy, this is Roger Smith. Now I get bad. I say, what do you want, you fucking gay cocksucker? Now I'm back being strong again because I'm home and he's not. He said, well, Ann and I had a big talk. We'd like you to go to the Fontainebleau. We get $5,000 a week. You want it? And of course, I was
booking you on a gig.
Huh?
He's booking you on a gig.
Yeah. After threatening to kill me, only because of Ann. I mean, she got in his face and threatened him. Several times she talked about marriage with me and having a nice Italian baby, and we went through that, but it never happened. And he said, I'll fly you to Fontainebleau in Miami, first class tickets. If you want 1 or 2 suites, do whatever you want, and you come down and be the conductor for her show for 2 weeks. Well, I did. And saw her every afternoon and at night on the beaches of Florida, Miami Beach. And that's how that occurred. Eating crab at Joe's Stone Crab and just having a delightful time. And that's what occurred after my threat of getting killed.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
And she was, be honest with you, she was this sweet, innocent European girl that you ever wanted to meet. I mean, she would made the order for me because me being an arrogant prick and her with that nicety, I like nice girls. I like nice, sweet girls that can put up with me, So I'm not like that now.
Well, you look in good shape, so I don't know if I don't know if you're going to get a knock on your door now while we're in the middle.
But I practice being honest, and sometimes being honest is not good for the soul, good for people to hear the real truth. The truth sometimes is hard to take, but In my book, every word in that book is true. Every word I've said to you is true. They all happen, and I don't make up stories. I can't make up stories. I can't do it. You know.
No, look, I've read the book. You don't. It's not told in a way that's. There's no effort at any point to try and raise your image in any way. But there are certain things like the camera doesn't lie. We heard you playing the way you play, with great jazz ensembles. Some of those, and I haven't even played. We'd be playing. We're going to end this in a couple of minutes because we've taken a lot of your time now. But we'll play out with some. I want people to hear some of the great jazz playing that you did. There's some of the stuff with the late Richie Cole. We just lost Richie Cole.
Richie.
Maybe play some of that. But I don't want to leave.
That story, David, of Richie Cole. Richie Cole, my God, he was bigger than anybody at one time. Played with Sonny Stitt. Of course, he studied with Phil Woods and hung out with Phil for a while. And then he joined Eddie Jefferson, of course, Buddy Rich band, and he was balling Brenda Vaccaro, Richie Cole. He had the world by the balls. And that substance abuse and alcohol took him down, that he had to leave New York. And he came knocking on my door one day because Phil Woods and I were close friends. We played together. We recorded together.
You did an album together, right?
Yeah, we did an album together. And when I went to New York, I played with he and Gene Quill at the Pink Elephant in Brooklyn. And I made such a nice impression on Phil that he always loved my playing and respected me. So anyway, I get a knock on my door. Open the door, it's Richie Cole. He said, Jimmy, I'm Richie Cole. He said, Phil Woods sent me. I said, Phil Woods sent you. He said, yeah, he told me I'd be perfect to play with you. And there it was. That was the beginning of a 50-year relationship. Richie was like a little brother to me. I mean, I had to look out for him. But when he was straight, he played great. Once in a while, he'd get
great player, yeah. Wonderful musician.
We were friends for 50 years or so. We did everything together. And I really miss being able to call Richie for a gig because he knew my book inside and out. And we played like a glove together. And it's sad how life turns out. You make your own life. I mean, he shortened his life by his living habits. And that's how I met Richie Cole.
So the last name that I wanted to go to takes you to the golf course, and you're a great golfer, and you were being asked to come out and play. But this is the person I'm going to here is Joe Pesci, and I love the story. You're playing golf with Joe Pesci, and one day he says to you, "Do you know?" Now, first of all, some people will remember when I first had Joe Donofrio on, we shared a recording of Joe Pesci singing with Pat Martino and Joey DiFrancesco, and we didn't tell people who it was, and we were asking people to guess. And he's a great singer. Lewis Nash, the drummer, good friend of mine. Lewis was raving about him when he recorded on that project that you were involved with, Joe, at Steve Jankowski's studio. So when we it was no surprise to me by the time I got to this in the book that, when you mentioned that, you actually give him kudos that he's a good singer.
Very good.
Very good. Very great phrasing. But he reached out, he phoned you looking for a gig in Las Vegas, and you never called him back in the room.
Right.
Twice it was, and he said, thank God you never called him back, because if he got the gig...
The funny part about it was I was on the range of the Las Vegas Country Club, and he was there with Mark Giardino, or one of his close friends, and Tommy DeVito from the Four Seasons, Frankie Valli, and an attorney named Mike Singer. And they had to wait before they teed off on the 8th hole because it was crowded. So they walked over to the range, and I was hitting balls by myself, and Mike approached me, and this little squinty little guy was with him. I had no idea who he was. And he asked, Joe asked Mike Singer, he said, "Who is that guy there?" He said, "That's Jimmy Mulidore." He said, "That motherfucker, I want to talk to him." So he came over, he says, "You cocksucker," Joe Pesci. I said, "What?" I know who he was by then. He says, "I called you 2, 3, 4 fucking times. I played guitar. I wanted to play with you. You never returned my call." We didn't have cell phones in those days. "You never returned my call." He said, "I want to thank you because I went to LA and become an actor." And from that time, we hung out for 6 months or so every day. And I got to know Joe inside out, backwards, blue. He didn't want to play with anybody but me and him. I was his gopher. I'd had to drive the cart so he can walk and get exercise. He didn't want anybody around. He wanted to do what men do when they're by themselves. And everybody that approached us, I'd ask him, "Do you mind if they play with?" No. He only allowed famous singer Don Cherry, who is deceased now. Don Cherry. He had a hit record, Bandigo. And he asked me 10 times, "Can I play with you and Joe?" Don almost won the U.S. Open, the Masters. Great golfer. Joe said, "Fuck him. I don't want him around." So eventually he gave in. We played one round with him. And Don brought his wife, which was suicide. He looked at me and said, "I'll kill you." Joe said to me, I thought, "I don't want no fucking women around here," and you bring his wife. That was the end of anybody playing with us. But Joe was great. I mean, he loved my mother. He visited her several times when she had strokes. He paid for 4 of her birthday celebrations of probably over 30 people. Every time I go pay the bill, it was paid by Joe Pesci. So you can say what you want about Joe Pesci. I love him. Love him madly.
Well, you know this. You might have answered a question that it's been in the news in recent, say, over the last year, because The Irishman was released, the Martin Scorsese thing, and Joe's performance. Right. Joe's performance in that is phenomenal, but he kept turning it down. Several times he turned it down, and in fact, during that session, I'm not sure if I talked to you about this, Joe, but you would have been familiar with that because they were calling him while he was recording that session with you, right? He was getting calls from De Niro and he kept saying no, and Steve Jankowski, and now I understand why, because in your story they call him and he asks you, it's your screening is calls for him on the golf course. And De Niro calls, and he won't take the call at that point. Either De Niro or somebody from his office calls, and he said, "I only got $60,000 for Raging Bull," and
yes. Well, I was screening his calls. Michael Jordan called, "Joe there," and I'm saying, "Who are you?" "Never mind who I am. Is Joe there?" I said, "Well, I got to know who you are. I'm not giving the phone." He says, "Michael." So I give the phone to Joe. Joe's Michael, and they talk. Then the other black sportscaster, he called, and I went through the same scenario. He said, "What do you got, a fucking henchman answering your phone?" So finally, a lady calls from De Niro's office, and Robert De Niro for Joe Pesci. And I looked at Joe. I said, "You want the call?" He said, "Yeah, give me." So he says, "February 21st, we're doing the 50th anniversary of Raging Bull at the Waldorf. And Martin wants you over there to celebrate it." And Joe says, "Fuck you and fuck Martin. I made fucking $60,000. You cocksuckers made all the money. Fuck you, I ain't coming." And he didn't. Joe Pesci.
Wow. See, you were there for that. That's nobody else will get. We'll get a story like that. But it's he actually, Joe is kind of very interesting because there was footage on one of those. It'd be what it's like Entertainment Tonight. That wasn't a show, And because when I met Joe, it was at he was with Joey D at Smalls.
Oh, that's way, way ahead of time. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was at Celino Clark's birthday party, and had been in Celino's band, and so Celino introduced me to Joe that particular night, and I said to Joe, I saw a video of you playing jazz guitar, and you were playing the right chord. You know what you're doing. And he goes, "Oh, you saw that?" He knew. He said it was that he was playing at somebody's wedding, and he said, "I'd no work as an actor in those days." So I'm thinking he had to have had some money coming from Raging Bull, but he must have been on no residuals or anything like that. It was just because he wasn't a big star yet. He was on a flat fee probably.
Yeah.
So that explains an awful lot. I should probably. Sorry, go ahead.
David, one nice thing about Joe is one of the times, 6 months we played every day. One thing, he did invite me over his house, and he wanted to give me something for my keepsake. So I got a CD that he did for me where he plays guitar and sings on everything. I still got that. And one time we're going down one of the fairways, and I get a call. And I'm driving the cart, and he's walking. So I get a call. My mother had been rushed to the hospital. She had a stroke. So I said, Joe, I got to go. I said, here, take the cart. I'll walk in. He said, where you got to go? I said, my mother got rushed to the hospital. He said, let's go. Now think about that. He comes to the hospital, he walks in. Now my mother had a mini stroke. She's sitting in bed with 2 doctors around her, nurses, like she's the star. And my mother was a star. She's like me. She'll tell your ass off in a New York minute. Joe remembers my mother. We walk in, and she never called Joe Pesci. She called him Italian with Joe P-E-E-P. Hey, Joe Peep. So he walks up there, and she introduces, this is my friend Joe Peep. They know who he is. But with her over friendliness and almost talking to him like he's part of the family, Joe Peep, they get a kick out of that. And he walks up there with his voice. He says, hey, Antoinette, let's go dancing. She said, get the fuck out of here. But that's probably tells you all about me and so on,
So I'm going to play a little bit of music of yours on the way out here. And I want to let you gentlemen get on with your lives, but thanks so much for sharing. You've had a very special life, and by the way, with the kind of shape you're in, I'm sure you're up to do gigs and tour and all that kind of stuff when we're allowed out of our houses again.
I'm ready to go.
I'm
playing good or better than ever I have. I'm innovative, and I'm ready to go. But take care of my beautiful friend Joe Donofrio there.
He's one good thing about all this is I talk to him, Joe. We don't talk every day, but it's pretty close to it sometimes. Like Joe's become a good friend over the years. I met him first when he almost cured my own constipation when he and Pat Martino walked in, and I'm playing a solo guitar gig, and I see these guys walking in.
Oh,
my gig.
Pat Martino. Oh God.
So it's Lisa is saying, love you, Dad. And
I love her, too. Tell her I love her.
And John Daly is... Sorry?
If I may, David, you depict the real David, not the real, but the other David O'Rourke. You're as great at what you do as that great saxophonist that I mentioned, Dave O'Rourke. I really can see what you're doing, and you're doing a hell of a job. I'm not blowing smoke. You are doing a hell of a job conducting this interview and keeping it running beautifully. So I thank you for doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. What I would say is that it's the hard part of this is you could focus on, and Joe will know what I'm talking about, when we're in. This is almost like the green room back in our dressing rooms. There's how much do we have time to tell? There's so much that Even from watching some of the videos of people you played with, and we could do a whole show on what it was like growing up in Youngstown.
Oh my God!
You know what I mean? And if you want to drop in again when like Boom Boom's supposed to be coming on at some point soon, and he knows you from back in those days. Joe, does he? Boom Boom knows Jimmy.
Jimmy, I don't know. Do you know Ray?
I the only occurrence that I had with Boom Boom when Guy D'Astolfo, the entertainment writer for the Youngstown Vindicator, was doing an interview with me about the Vegas Player, and I was coming to Akron to perform 2 days at the Blue Jazz Club with Richie Cole and Tomoko Ono. Oh my God, what a great keyboard player she is, Tomoko Ono. And I was talking to Guy on the phone, and Boom Boom walked in, and somehow, some way, he wanted to know, did Guy know me? And he got my book from Guy D'Astolfo, and I think he read it, but I never actually met Boom Boom. I was at the fight when he killed Kim, the Korean fighter, at Caesar's Palace. When in the fight,
I watched that. I was in New Jersey at the time.
I was at that fight when he killed that guy, but I never got to know Boom Boom real well.
He's okay. So we'll connect again at some point, right? We'll figure out. I think maybe something that might be nice a little bit down the line. We've talked your ears off today for well on 2 hours, but if at some point you wanted to come on sometime where instead of me asking questions, we let people type in their questions and I'll read them out.
I need you. No, you got to, you run the show. No, I don't want no yo asking me what kind of wreath I use on alto. No, I don't want that. No,
Okay.
You run the show. Do it the same way. I want to look at that beautiful face on the bottom, my beautiful friend Joe Donofrio, and you and myself. I like it this way.
Okay. Well, that's it right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I want you. I'm saying this to the people who are listening. I want you to hear what I heard earlier on. So I'm going to go to some of the stuff since we just lost Richie Cole recently. Some great playing with him. So thank you very much, Jimmy, for coming on. And it's despite your best efforts to sell yourself short as a gentleman, I think you're a gentleman.
Well,
I've never been out with you after the gig, though.
I can't keep my upbringing out of my personality when I'm talking to people that I like.
I go back to that story where I mean, this really did blow my mind that your father would buy a saxophone for an 8-year-old kid to keep him having a good instinct that if I can get this kid to work on this, I can keep him out of the steel mill. That's there's so much there. I just think that's a beautiful thing that whereas other parents would have told their kids, you'll be lucky if you get a job there. Don't get above your station and think you're any better than us. Or they wanted you to do well, and that's why I think it's really a moving thing that he was thinking ahead.
David, if I may,
yeah.
Johnny Russo one time said, he got my book, he read it. Johnny Russo, the actor from The Godfather.
Right, yeah.
And he said, the star of your book? Not you, it's your father.
Well, I understand. I agree with him. You're a close second, but your father. How many fathers do I'm a father. I got into the game late. I've an 11 and a 13-year-old, and it changed the way I think about everything. I don't give away free arrangements anymore. Somebody wants an arrangement, they pay for them because I got 2 kids. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You start to think differently. You still help people out, but you've got, and your father was thinking about his family, and he saw that steel mill, and he didn't want you guys in there.
Before I go, David, I want to give special kudos to Joe Donofrio. who at times has been very, very helpful in my career getting great jazz artists. And one of them was Eric Alexander. And Joe Donofrio arranged that. And it was funny because we were working at the anthology in San Diego. And I guess Joe called him and he says, what does it pay? And Joe told him, he said, you want the gig? They'll give you this much money. Take it or leave it. And he took it. And we made historical music. Eric is a wonderful tenor player. And then again, with Randy Brecker, I guess somehow, some way, Randy called Joe or something about me, because Joe and I have been connected for many, many years. And his opinion is very valid, very good, and people respect it. So I guess somehow, some way, Randy or he talked, and Joe said so and so and so. So anyway, he gave me good credentials. And then when Randy was late for our engagement, for 2-day engagement at the anthology in San Diego, I called his house. I spoke to his wife. I said, is Randy going to show up? She said, his plane got delayed. He is so excited to play with you. He heard you're such a great player. You'll be there. And because of Joe Donofrio, those events happen. So don't sell that man short.
No, things work out in a way that you never know. He hired me to replicate something I'd done around Sinatra's 100th birthday with an all-star big band at Jazz Standard. And he asked me about putting it together for the South Jersey Jazz Festival. And there's always two emotions there. You get excited about getting the cats back together again when they're all stars. But then you're thinking, how are we going to do it? People's schedules, or everyone's schedule worked out, Joe, didn't it? They were all...
It was phenomenal.
How they were all free, like Tim and Tim Reese and Lewis Nash, Peter Washington. They were all arriving in from different places. Jeremy Pelt, even... we rented a minivan so he would drive some of the cats down. There were so many different people stepping up doing all these different things, and it worked out. We were all I can say is there was the party backstage in a town that Joe had nothing to do with this, so I'm to blame for this, and I don't drink alcohol. But the party afterwards, there was more alcohol backstage in a town that doesn't sell it. But I've no idea how it got there, and that's for another show. So I'm gonna go out with the 2006 Jazz Festival clip from the DVD. Thanks again, Jimmy, for doing this and taking the time, and Joe for putting it together.
Thank you, David. And Jimmy, you were wonderful. Always great to hear your stories.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, David. You're wonderful. Joe, you're wonderful. And let's do it again.
Absolutely. We'll.
Like Joe said, you could talk to me for 10 hours. I'll never get a run out of these great, honest stories.
No. We'll. I leave it up to you to decide where you're going to go, which ones you want to tell, and which one. But I think people really loved hearing them because, aside from anything else, it was a little window into, coming from Ireland as I did. I used to love those movies and the Americana and and it's a first-hand. Somebody who lived through it giving us a backstage version of it. So thank you for lifting the lid on all of these and giving people an insight into it from an honest standpoint. The times when you would have been fearful for your life and the times when we didn't even, but throughout all this, and this is where I'm going out as we close, throughout all this man was playing his ass off nightly leading a band and playing with a band in Vegas. I do have to ask you a personal question on my part. Before I was friends with on one of the gigs I did, she came up in Vegas. So did you ever come across Deborah Weiss, a trombone player?
I know that name, but I don't have any personal relationship with her. I know that.
She lives in New York now, I think. But back then, she was from Arizona. She toured. She became part of Sinatra's touring band late in life because Carl Fontana hurt his arm in a barroom fight, and they were looking for somebody to play lead. And and she was on the gig with Carl and Sinatra Jr., Frank Jr., and as they're phoning around, she says, before we phone any more people, do you want this gig? And so it was kind of unusual for, you know, a lady that was, to get the lead chair in Frank Sinatra's touring band. But I know she went to Dublin, where I'm from, she played the last 2 years, I think, of, you know, the touring band. But Vegas and New York, he had his, you know, you played with the house bands in Vegas, but she had played in the casinos. I just wondered if she was somebody you knew. So without further ado,
well, we talk again. We got to talk about Carl Fontana. That's another half an hour.
We could do a show on that. So listen, me and Joe will tease out a few dates and see if any of them work for you. If you're up to doing it again, and come on.
Anytime you want. I really, it's so nice to be able to be refreshed and be able to go back and talk about these wonderful things that have happened, good or bad, but they did happen. And,
they did, yeah. And thanks for sharing with people who I know will enjoy hearing a part of jazz history, a part of Americana history, and and then the immigrant experience from your grandparents down. There's a whole lot of angles that somebody can view all this from, and
you don't call it an Italian a greaser unless you know what you're doing. Concerning my grandfather, you read that in the book.
Yes, yeah. So I can go back and revisit. I had to get through the whole book and make notes so that I'd be asking. It would be a waste of your time and Joe's time if I didn't read that book to be able to ask the kind of questions I asked. So I want to revisit some of it. It was a lot of fun to read, and it was great to read about the jazz history aspect, because those of us who came up at a certain time playing jazz, we want to hear what it was like back in the day with, you know, and to be able to talk to somebody who went out to the airport to pick up Bird without a saxophone. You know, I don't get to talk about this stuff every day. So
I mean, really, I asked Joe, where the hell did I come from? How did I wind up in all these scenarios? But as God has it for your life, whatever it is, we all wind up in different situations. That's what life is all about, I guess, you know.
So here comes some of the 2006 Jazz Festival with this very fine musician, Jimmy Mulidore, and thank you everyone who I know you all enjoyed this, so you should be thanking us actually, right? These people giving the story. So thanks again, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Very good, David. Take care. I love you, Joe.
Love you too, Jimmy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Jimmy Mulidore with special guest Richie Cole on sax.
Where did it go?
Here's a tune entitled Doxy, written by Sonny Rollins. Richie Cole. Up here, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to thank the Grand Victoria, Stephen Jimenez, wherever you're at, my man. We're having a ball up here. You have no idea what you're in for. You got Joey DeFrancesco, Pat Martino, world's #1 guitar player, and James Moody and the Dizzy Gillespie All-Stars. Lord have mercy. Right now, we'd like to play our last tune. It's an original that I wrote for my hero. I've known him for 40 years. My idol, and if you ever met an angel in your life, you will. His name is James Moody. Here's a tune entitled For Moody's Sake. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. How about it for Dennis McClure? Richie Cole on alto. My man John Lee. Tomoko Ono. Woo! My name is Jimmy Mulidore. I hope you enjoyed it. Please sit there because a real happening is coming for you. Thank you for coming.